Hi there, and welcome again to BSF Recovery Team. This week's video, we got to do a repair to the wrecker. Recently we were taking a look at it and we noticed something real serious. Now, I'm not sure how I broke this, but nevertheless it's broken and we're going to have to fix it. Take a look. This is the steering gear, and you can see that one of the ears is broke clean off of the casting. That'll never hold up in the woods towing somebody out. Well, here it is, guys. That ear is broken completely off of there. Now, it didn't hurt any of the internals in the box, and surprisingly enough, it didn't hurt our frame either. Unlike some of the half tons, the frame on the 1 ton wrecker is much thicker and doesn't crack out like it does on the half tons. So our frame's fine, but our steering box is definitely broken. We went to crossover steering a while back, so this is actually a 2-wheel drive box with a 2-wheel drive fitment shaft in it. Unfortunately, we don't have another 2-wheel drive box, but we do have the original steering box from the wrecker, the 4-wheel drive one with the push-pull style drag link. The difference between the two boxes is in the fitment shaft. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the fitment shaft out of this 2-wheel drive box and put it in this 4-wheel drive box so we can keep our crossover steering. First thing is get the fitment shaft out of this box. Now, it's going to get kind of messy. There's a lot of fluid in here, so we're going to do it over a pan. A lot of people are scared to mess with this, the adjustment, but since we're swapping parts, we're going to have to adjust it anyway, so we're going to take it apart. 3/16 Allen wrench, or 5/8. We hold the adjustment screw, loosen up the lock nut. We're going to take the lock nut all the way off, continuing to hold the adjustment screw. Now we can take the 4 bolts off the cap. Now what we want to do is turn the adjustment screw in, and it actually lifts our cap off. The adjustment screw is threaded into the cap. Yeah. Now we're going to dump the fluid out. We'll let that drain for a little bit. Okay, most of that should be drained out now. Set this aside. Now, the steering box has to be centered to get that fitment shaft out, so the gear will clear. And then you can just take a hammer, plastic of course, so you don't mess up the threads on the bottom, and just tap that out. Oh, still got some fluid coming out. That's the part that we need to change our 4-wheel drive push-pull drag link steering box over to the 2-wheel drive style that we use for the crossover steering. Now we'll take our four-wheel drive box apart the same way. We gotta let this box drain. Okay, now we'll center up that box. Oh. So we can get the pitman shaft out. There we go. Give it a little tap. There we go. There's that pitman shaft. Now you can see the difference in the two ends of the pitman shaft between the push-pull drag link and the two-wheel drive box that we use for the crossover steering. So this is the one we want to use. This one we don't need right now. There is also a little bit difference in our caps. I don't know if this is common across the board between the two-wheel drive and four-wheel drive one or not, but the caps are interchangeable, so we'll stick with the one that was with the two-wheel drive box. The differences I see here is the four-wheel drive one uses a gasket and has a wear bushing inside the cap. This one does not, and it uses a O-ring for a seal instead. Okay, still got some fluid spilling out there. Good idea to have some rags handy when you're doing this. So now we'll just put this one in, make sure our steering box is still centered, and that we center up the thickest gear, which is the center one. You see that the other two gears are a little bit smaller. That makes a difference in your adjustment, or when you make your adjustment. We'll get to that a little bit later. So we set that in there like that. Clean up our fluid mess here. A couple of blocks of wood so we can stand our gear up. Clean off the surface here. And again, we want to make sure our box is centered, that the center gear and is contacting the internal gear in the right spot. We'll clean off our cap. Let's see if we can get you a better picture of that. There, can you see that there? All right. I'll put our O-ring back in the cap. And we can start putting our cap back on. Now remember that adjustment screw is threaded into the cap. So we have to set our cap on the screw and turn it counterclockwise to start it into the threads of the cap. And we'll carefully thread it down until our cap is snug, and it actually starts pulling the pitman shaft back up. Like that. Now we can put the bolts in on the cap. And we can start our lock nut onto the adjustment screw. Now for our adjustment portion. Remember, we have to have our steering box centered. That thick gear has to be in the right spot, because that's where the tightest portion of the steering box is, when it's straight ahead or when it's centered. That's the biggest mistake that people make when they go to adjust the steering box, is that they don't have it centered or the wheel straight ahead if it's in the vehicle. So what you want to do is you want to snug down the adjustment screw until it pushes the pitman shaft, this shaft, down tight against the teeth of the other gear. Those teeth are tapered, so the further down you push it, the tighter it is. So you snug it up, and then all you do is just back it up 1/2 turn, and it actually pulls the gear back up just a little bit to give you that slight amount of slack in the gear. But you want that adjusted with the gear straight ahead or centered, wheel straight ahead, whatever you want to call it. But that's the key, because the center tooth is the thickest tooth, and that's where it goes over center. That's where you want the slack adjusted properly. If you adjust it too tight, you have a condition that's affectionately called tractor steer sometimes, or memory steer, where it's too tight to go over the center. So the wheels always want to stay to one side or the other. The vehicle doesn't return to center after you turn a corner and let go of the steering wheel. That's because the gear is adjusted too tight. And too loose, of course, will give you a little bit of wandering and stuff. So you want to make sure that you adjust it with the steering gear centered, or that thickest tooth right in the center of the other teeth. Then you tighten down your lock nut. That's all there is to it. Now we can put the gear back in the truck and head out onto the trails. Thanks for watching, BSF Recovery Team. Keep wheeling, stay safe out there, and maybe we'll see you in the woods.